matter who you are, where you are, what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed, the light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now.
Hi, and welcome to Whole Soul Masteries Live Well, Live Whole podcast series, where we focus on mind, body, spirit, wellness, fitness, and wholeness, and bringing awareness to the gifts of integrating polarity within us to move into a higher state of unity consciousness. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive, and the host of Whole Soul Masteries podcast. And joining me again today is Renee Taintor, who is the creator of The Solution Revolution and an incredible speaker and messenger about integrating and honoring our human selves and our divine selves. So welcome, Renee. I'm so excited to be talking with you again.
Me too, you.
And so Renee and I have visioned a podcast together where she's going to be asking me some questions where we can delve a little deeper into some of the channeled material that I bring through my blog, which is frequencywriter.com. And I also post videos on Color the Magic on YouTube. And so this is going to be a beautiful conversation where we can sort of unpack and discuss a little bit and stream through some more understanding about the higher vibrational messages that the guides give to me as a channel of the Arcturian Collective. And sometimes it can be challenging to receive these beautiful higher vibrational energies and messages. And then as the human self, right, we have to figure out how to make that accessible and applicable in our everyday lives. So please, Renee, ask away.
Okay, well, I've been hearing this word for a really long time. I think I've even discussed it with you. And I've even said, I'm sovereign. And I hear a lot of people say that. And so sovereignty is the subject that I would like to get more clarity on, especially since I discovered that I thought I knew or was sovereign. And, you know, knowing that you're sovereign is the first step. I mean, because then you enter that vibration of, you know, I'm sovereign, what does that look like? And so I really would like to discuss what does that look like? Because I've been known to fool myself before, because, you know, you're sometimes fighting your ego mind and old programs. And I have fooled myself into thinking, no, I'm making this decision for me. And this is my decision. I'm not making it with any other thing involved, and not true. I learned later. So I would like, and I've heard great things from the guides about, you know, owning your sovereignty and becoming sovereign and stuff like that. And I think it's important that we get into some of the details about what that is and what does that mean and how does it look and feel inside yourself.
Well, it's a great question, and I think there are many layers to, you know, response to that. And so if we can sort of unpack some of the layers, because I want to respond about sovereignty, but I first want to say that we really do need to remember and take a breath and remember that we live in a vibrational universe. The world in which we live doesn't often mirror that to us. You know, we're trained in school to look at facts and evidence, and I'm all about facts and evidence, but it puts us into our left brain, and our left brain is all about tracking things in a linear timeline. And it's not about really educating and informing and guiding us through energy and vibration, which is the right brain's job to lead us and guide us in that more vibrational, accessible, fluid, flowing, and higher dimensional perspectives. That's how we get that bird's eye view of our lives. And that leads us into a deeper understanding of sovereignty. then I want to say two other things that are sort of important. Maybe it's three. One is that if we are vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe, we live our lives in layers. So we are a being that's filled with all these vibrational layerings in a world that denies that we're vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe and living mostly from their left brain.
Their intellect, right?
Their intellect and their egos and all that we've been conditioned to believe is what being a human being is about. And so when we're, looking at something like sovereignty, right away, some people can listen and we can have a conceptual understanding of sovereignty from our left brains, but we're not really activated in the vibrational understanding and embodiment of what that really means as a soul presence and essence on the planet.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then I just wanted to bring two other things that are really important, because when you unpack a concept like sovereignty or anything, and we're moving from a 3D understanding to a 5D understanding, or we're integrating the two anyway, we really have to look at that from our human selves. Sovereignty is a word and it's a concept, but in the right brain, in our more expansive soul essence, it's a living energy.
And who we are.
And it's who we are, and it forms us at a whole deeper level. And so I also just wanted to say that we're learning about becoming more frequency specific to the new Earth's energies that are inviting us to expand our sovereignty. But these aren't concepts. If we can step into our left brain and we can step into 3D, but when we're really talking about living our sovereignty and becoming frequency specific to the new Earth, we're really learning how to expand into embodying more of our right brain's understandings, which connects us to something much more infinite. And so, and so thinking about that, and then admission is by vibration. When we're trying to enter this new fifth dimensional consciousness, this new fifth dimensional Earth that many people watching this video might be aware of. And some people maybe are hearing that for the first time, but this planet is going through a planetary ascension. It's rising into its natural fifth dimensional organic divine state, and it's a higher consciousness. And that's where our sense of unity consciousness and our interconnectedness and sovereignty fits right into that. But our left brains are never going to get us there, because it's just a loop of a narrative, of a concept that never grows. It doesn't expand, right? It only has basically one or two definitions of itself, and that's it. But when you enter into the realm of the spirit and the soul and the right brain and this higher fifth dimensional consciousness, boy, everything comes to life. It's like a whole world that you didn't see before.
Right. I discovered when I was learning about the energy game and the solution revolution stuff from inside of me, that it is two different worlds, and that the left brain, and I don't remember how I just allowed new thoughts in there, because like you said, the narrative in the left brain just keeps going round and round. I also call that the ego mindset. And if there's no place for a new thought, like I am sovereign or you are sovereign, right, then it will just kick out that thought and not even give it a second thought. And then you're just stuck there again. But since I know about the right brain, and I have connected to my heart and the infinite, and I know what sovereignty is, I'm discovering that I thought I was being sovereign in some cases, but I haven't been. So I think that's a function of the light showing me what it is.
And I think there's layers that you're probably living it, and see, the left brain will even judge the right brain's success in living sovereignty. It'll say, well, whatever sovereignty is, you're not living it, right?
Nice try, honey.
Bring us back on its loop, because it wants to maintain itself. It's a closed system, and it doesn't like newness. It's threatened by expansion. It's threatened by things it doesn't know. That's the ego. It doesn't like what it doesn't understand and what it can't control.
Right.
And when we're talking about the infinite nature of us as divine beings and a soul essence on the planet, what's more threatening than that is us truly gaining our freedom. And the ego is thinking, yeah, like, Houston, we have a problem here.
Right.
You know? And all the red lights are flashing, because the minute you try and open and leave that closed circuit, it's got an ego leak. Like, it is leaking energy. It is leaking its power. And our sovereignty, I mean, there's so many things I can say about sovereignty, but to me, I just need to tune in a minute. When I feel the embodiment of sovereignty, and I like the word sovereignty, it feels vibrationally bigger than freedom. And I really feel word essences when I feel just sounds and syllables of words. But sovereignty is bigger, fuller, richer. There's a part of us that is not, we're in the world, but we're not of it. We're here, but another life force directly from source is animating us in our sovereignty. And it's guiding our lens of perception. It's guiding how we hear, how we move, how we speak, how we feel, how we interact with people, how we show up in our beingness inside us.
Well, yeah, and I remember when I was learning, I called the ego mindset the little picture, and the divine mindset, which is your, you know, infinite connection in your heart and to the infinite God and wisdom and all that and higher consciousness. And I call that the big picture. So, wow, when you are, like you said, when you're living in the big picture, you see everything differently, you experience it differently, you have a higher understanding. It makes your life easier. Spirit used to tap me on the shoulder and say, back up until the picture is big enough for you to see it the way you should, so that you're not reacting.
Such a beautiful insight that you got. And I love that, the small picture and the big picture. And it is, there's that bird's eye view concept. Or my partner Lacey, in a lot of her work as a life coach, uses the example of Google Earth, you know, that you can zoom out in your picture on your map. And it's true, like if you were lost and you were trying to get your bearings, right, you can zoom out. You might be trapped on a one-way street somewhere, but if you zoom out far enough, you'll get a frame of reference on where you are in the context to everything else around you. And sovereignty, that's really important. I want to go back to that, because it's something that happens to a lot of people. It's easy for our left brain, and let's just call it our ego brain, because that's really, you know, ultimately at an essence, at a vibrational level, what it is. It has been trying to help us manage being in this 3D earth. When we all separated from source and each other, there had to be a part of us that was scrambling to help us to survive. And the ego was the one pushed to the forefront when the spiritual body sort of disconnected, and the emotional body, you know, and even to some degree, I mean, we've been functioning from our physical and our mental bodies in 3D without the wisdom of our spiritual and emotional energy bodies truly informing us from this place of divine grace. When we had that fall from grace and humanity essentially separated from source consciousness and each other, it was the ego that was pushed forward, like, you lead, you're it, right? And the ego was probably freaking out, because in times past, when we were in a fifth dimensional consciousness previously, because we go through cycles of ages, you know, we have these cycles of time where, you know, we do go through higher dimensional cycles. I think for evolutionary purposes, we do go through other cycles. This seems to be a little bit of an anomaly that people and beings on planet Earth have gone through, because I think it's gone to some extremes of polarity. We could talk about that another time. But when we thought we were entering a lower dimensional space to learn about our power as conscious creators, you know, it actually went a little bit more extreme. So when we look at this, that the ego was pushed to the forefront, it was used to collaborating with its other aspects. It used to have the support of the spiritual body inside us. It used to have the support of the activated emotional body that was connected directly to source energy. Now it's like, talk about the little picture. The ego's life shrunk way down. It's kind of responsible for managing our physical body. That's why when we have all kinds of ailments, it's part of the ego and those karmic loops acting themselves out in our physical body, which can create havoc. And yet the ego doesn't have any higher dimensional skills. It's trapped in a 3D world too, and it can only see this much.
That's because of the vibration, right? Because it's a lower vibration.
Lower vibration and just the function and the agendas of this matrix that continue to reinforce this divide and conquer, and reinforce that we are all separated and we all have to be, you know, trying to survive. We're out for ourselves, right? And you can see what happens on a planet when everybody's living from their egos, everybody's trying to survive. You know, there could be somebody starving on the next street corner, but many people are just, you know, eyes
Right.
to the ground, head. You know,
They are exclusive in the little picture.
in the
That's
little,
another insight I got when I was doing this work, is that the little picture is exclusive. It's me and my family and my circle of friends, and the rest of you people are on your own. And the big picture is inclusive. And I didn't realize that I was dealing with vibrations, that the big picture is a high vibration, because when you have that higher understanding, because Spirit said to me, the bigger your picture, the easier your life.
yes,
Because you're not in doing this every time with the ego,
yes, right.
you know. So you're in the big picture, you have this big understanding, and you have this acceptance, which I guess is also vibration.
Right.
Acceptance and love and compassion. And so you look at people going like this, and you can accept them because you can relate, because you have a human side too. But when you let go of the lower vibration and the energy game and live from the bigger picture, then you become that force that impacts what's going on around you more than it impacts you.
Which is exactly, which is a big part of what started you on your journey. And it is powerful when you realize that the ego's not really empowered. It doesn't have that bigger picture perspective, and therefore it doesn't even know how to breathe and connect, that there's a solution for every question. There's an answer for every problem. There really aren't true problems and challenges when you're in your divine self, using your language. When we're in these higher vibrational perspectives, there are ripples that come through. I mean, picture a much more zoomed out, like a rock in a pond. You know, when you're looking at the big picture, we're out here in these much further out ripples, and we can see the stone that fell in. We know all the conditions that made that stone fall in because we saw it happen. We're way out here. But if you're in here and the rock fell, the rock's panicking because it's saying, well, now we're underwater, right?
Well, this is how the ego sees the big picture: a piece over here, a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, but not the whole picture.
And they're not connected. Whereas from the
They're
big
not connected, and there's reaction.
well, and there's all those ripples are informing the next ripples. From the bigger picture, the ripples aren't separate. The ripples are all connected to a higher perspective, and they're all informing. It's almost like you could just picture a tone, or a bell has rung, and the higher aspects of you have just been informed. There's been an event. and all of you pays attention from a higher perspective to that event, which might be the stone falling into the pond. But when you're in your ego mindset and you're stuck on that loop, and has this tiny little lens and says, oh, danger, danger, we've got a problem here. Okay.
React. We need to react.
And that's when you said there's all these other stones in ponds that's creating a chain reaction. And that's why many of us either have our head down because we just don't want the sky to fall on us again, right? We're trying to survive. And we don't have that higher perspective. And the ego is frantic and exhausted most of the time because there's just now too much in a world, especially a globally connected world through technology. There's too many fires to put out all the time. And,
Right.
and
And I
so,
think that the difference between the ego mind and the divine mind reflects what's going on right now on the planet, is the great divide, they're starting to call it.
right.
The people are divided, and they maybe don't want to see things, and they're not open to seeing things. They don't want change.
Well, and they're like, in a way, I don't know if this is the best metaphor, but you know how a bug goes to the light, right? And even if a narrative is not the lights, this is not the best metaphor. Often a narrative is kind of an agenda of some factions in the world. But
Right.
still, it's like it's so attracted to that. The ego is so attracted to the fires. It's so attracted to the chaos. It's attracted to all the things that are kind of lower vibrational, because ultimately in the end it's trying to figure out a way to put out that fire, to push it away, to cover it up, to deny it, to react to it. But it almost feels like it has to address it, it has to go to it, or has to deny it. One or the other. It's playing a game with itself. But the ego, you can see, is in a trap. Like it doesn't even know how to take a breath, where it says, do I want to race to that narrative? Do I want to join that division?
Well, everybody else is, right?
And it's just, and whereas the soul self, that divine self inside us, will watch everybody, going to the narrative, and everybody yelling about and fighting each other and getting really into it. But the soul self will pause. And even if it's not in words, it will take a breath. And when it takes that breath, it's connecting to an infinite universe. And it's reading the energy, it's feeling all the ripples that it's connected with. And it's tuning in inside itself to the sovereign choice of, how best can I be my light in this moment, on the planet, at this time, in this situation. And sometimes it's to send light from way afar, right? Sometimes the answer that comes from within is, I'm going to send a lot of, universal cosmic energy and the angels of this realm to go support whatever that trauma or tragedy is. Sometimes we're called to be in the middle of that conversation, whatever's going on with everybody. And there's, obviously, from the realm of spirit, there's an infinite amount of responses, of creative responses that we can choose. The ego feels like it only has one response. Oh my God, this is happening. And now I'm like,
response. It's the same response, because there's not a lot of choice in the ego mind.
no.
And what I learned from learning to live from the heart space and live in the moment, is that your heart does have the infinite wisdom, and plus you have the feeling of you're not stressed or freaked out, because you do know there's a solution. And it was my heart that taught me all of this. So if you just get quiet and connect to that space, and you have this knowing, which is a vibration, then you wait, and sometimes you don't get the answer right then, but it's coming, and you can trust it and rely on it. But sometimes in the middle, because often I was a flight attendant when I was working, and often there you couldn't wait for a response. You're dealing with passengers or a situation that needed to be worked on. I just got silent and felt into the situation and detached my ego mind, because that would be the energy game, where it's the reaction and, what's everybody else doing and what do I have to do? But then when you come as a conscious creator instead of a reactive creator, then, it was never failed. It never failed to have, still never fails to have the answer that you need in that moment. And maybe the answer is
sovereignty. That
yes.
is sovereignty. When you're in the conscious creator vibration inside yourself, no matter what is going on, when you're in that listening and conscious creating space inside yourself, you're accessing other dimensional wisdom that your ego mindset, your left brain mindset, your human self just can't access, which is why it's so freaking out. And the catalyst for the reactive creator is fear, right? That's the fire it feels, is fear.
Fear, being out of control.
And being
Not
out of
being able
control.
to control it.
And truly feeling the limitations of the ego, which it doesn't want anybody to know, because that would threaten it even more, is that if the ego, it's like the ego is the Wizard of Oz. The ego is the wizard that was projecting itself behind the curtain as if it had all the answers from the all-knowing Oz, right? But that's the ego. And it doesn't have all the answers. And when somebody pulls the curtain back and says, oh my gosh, you're just a human being pretending to be, Oz, or this all-knowing God, or, this wiser being, it's exposed to itself. And so that's another level of the fear, is not only does it not know what to do most of the time, because it doesn't have access to any deeper wisdom. It only knows how to chase fires and stir up fires, or try to deny that they're happening at all.
And react and react. And then I was able to see in the energy game that when you react to something, like something your boss said, and you go home and you tell your husband and he's upset, and then next time you see your friend, you tell her, and then 6 months later, you might be at a party and people are talking about horrible bosses, and they go, you think that's bad? And then everyone is reactivating stuff from the past and then they get upset all over again. And so I started calling that the energy game. It is a whole thing. It's a thing on the whole planet. Everybody supports it. Well, not everybody, because you can tell the people who are in their sovereignty or in their heart space, because they're not reacting. They are showing that love and compassion and understanding, and they're backing up to allow what's going on and choose their response from their heart.
Exactly. And that, exactly what we're talking about. And egos love to trigger other egos, because number one, it gives it something to do, right? And it's always kind of in this, the ego can often be in this frenetic energy. It's just this electrical, and it's looking to activate other electrical beings. And it's also trying to grab power, because it knows that it's very disempowered without its other aspects.
Right.
And in the 3D world, when we're service to self, ultimately we're trying to also grab a little bit of power from somebody else, because we know we've lost our true power when we disconnected from source. So, and this isn't conscious to everybody. Obviously, when this is happening, right, and you have somebody on the plane,
it's reactive.
It's reactive. And it's at the lower, it's coming from our lower chakras, our root chakra, our sacral chakra, our solar plexus chakra, where that's carrying all of our pain, all those wounds when we had stories from other lifetimes, and even this lifetime, where we were hurt, we weren't safe, we weren't taken care of, we didn't have enough. All that is vibrating and communicating with us all day long. And when the ego activates its, panic, it pushes the panic button, and it can do that a lot of the day in this reactive creating. It's also summoning other people into their reactive creating, and everybody's trying to just survive.
Everybody supports it. Most of the world supports it. And so in that divide, yes, you can practically see a person who's not reacting, because they're not just going, like this. And also, I think part of being sovereign, I wanted to bring up, is that I'm noticing that because I'm sovereign and I'm acting, I'm not reacting, I'm a conscious creator, it doesn't sit well with some people, because you speak your truth. And someone might just say something like, that's how it is. And if you disagree, you disagree with them, then you're not going to always get the response, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, or whatever. No, you get a response of, well, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Right. Well, so let's go back. I would say number one, what you just described is kind of like misery loves company. It does. And when people are all freaking out, even though they, in theory, want somebody who's going to come in and save the day, they also, unless somebody saves the day the way they want it to be saved, will judge the savior. So, there's this kind of hive mind, there's this, misery loves company, and they don't want you to really take away their story of fear and judgment and panic and drama. We've been so conditioned in this realm over lifetimes. This is not just this lifetime. We have a cumulative, I don't know, almost expectation or certainly comfort zone that this is the way human beings behave. And it's always been this way. For as far back as most of us can remember, especially with our lower chakras informing us of the traumas we carry there from other timelines and karma. You don't have to convince a lot of people that this is a tough world.
Well, right? And we don't give ourselves options. We weren't taught that. You look at how most of us were raised, that no one told you that you are an infinite being living in a body. Nobody told you that what you think and feel is more important than what other people think and feel. Nobody validated, well, I shouldn't say that. Most of us were raised that way. You weren't validated as a person. You weren't seen and heard. I certainly wasn't. I got smacked when I was real little for saying something to my father, and then boy, I went into hiding after that. It's not safe for me to express my
feelings.
And so all of us are like, we're all like walking on eggs, and then you learn to get your value from externally, from others, and if everybody around you is feeling okay, then you can feel good about yourself because you haven't created a problem someplace.
Right.
And that's the norm.
It is the norm. And if everybody else is reacting around you, that also summons you to join the reaction. And it is the stark contrast, the person who's not reacting, who is taking a moment to take a breath, who is taking a moment to connect into their sovereignty, into their heart center, and also into neutrality. I mean, many things.
Neutrality, that's it. That's part of sovereignty. That's a huge part, isn't it?
Huge part, where you're not wrestling the left and right brains, but you're kind of in that, middle way where you're really accessing the right brain, I would say, is where
I have to agree. Because left brain is the energy game. And so when you're neutral, and I didn't see that before, but that's so true. When you're neutral, you are disengaging from the energy game. And that was my whole thing, was learning to disengage. Didn't realize I was accessing my sovereignty. I didn't realize any of that. I just knew that I didn't want to be in that reactive thing. Because you
knew that you felt better. That's huge.
That's it. I didn't want to feel that judgment or that, resentment or any of those negative things, because it doesn't feel good. But you grow up feeling that, and then you get these defenses, against your parents, your siblings, your teachers, or whoever, the world, God, because you don't understand God and you don't realize who you are, and that your sovereignty is knowing that you are a piece of God. You're not the totality of God. But I like that quote that says, a drop in the ocean and the ocean in a drop.
Yes.
So you are God, but you're not the totality. You're a piece of God expressing as your presence of the omnipresence.
Exactly.
And that's being present, is accessing that infinite part and being in your sovereignty.
And that can be threatening to other people. It's kind of that herd mentality, that hive mind of, if everybody else is panicking, you should be panicking too.
How come you're not engaging?
Right. How are you not engaging? And
right.
What's important is the more you start to feel better, it just like fear can be self-reinforcing, that people, fear and all that reaction is trying to release what's so uncomfortable. It's coming out, right? Because it certainly isn't pleasant to take all those reactions, like you said, when you were a young child, and when you stuff it down, that leads people more in towards depression and anxiety. All these things, anxiety is not random. Depression isn't random. It's how we've chosen at some level of our consciousness, even if it was unconsciously, to deal with the level of stress we've been facing since childhood or further back into other lifetimes. And so we are having to learn how to move that energy. And people who are still feeling like they have low levels of life force, they feel like they don't have a lot of courage, they feel like they need to stay small and not speak up or speak out. You know, all of that is where they've swallowed all of that stress, and, you know, it's affected their solar plexus chakra, their sense of their own power. So we live our lives in layers. There are so many layers of us vibrationally communicating right now. And on the planet, if people would just give themselves permission to admit, number one, maybe I am a vibrational being. Maybe that's just the first step, is I don't understand that. But maybe the first step is saying, I'm willing to see myself as a multi-layered, multi-dimensional, energetic being. And if I am that, and I live in a multi-layered, multi-dimensional universe and a planet that's responding to that too, there's energy that's seen and there's energy that's unseen. And I'm a participant in that. That brings
that what you just said is huge, but that comes from you having years of exploring yourself, exploring options and giving yourself options. A lot of people, I think the fear is based on the unknown, and also they don't know what to do with what's in front of them, because I think that's what is the awakening that we're having now, is your old ways of doing things just aren't working anymore. Right. Because the world is different. The stuff you used to be able to count on and take to the bank is not there anymore. And so I think the energies of today and what's going on with the light is that it's forcing people to see things inside of them, in their mind and their person and their consciousness, that is not in harmony with the divine. And it comes up and they're going, wait a minute. And they don't want to see it. They don't, because they don't have the tools, because the tools are not in the left brain.
No.
Tools are in the right brain, the heart.
They keep going to that place that doesn't have the tools, like has those deficits basically. And they're also looking to be validated for their fear and the discomfort. So, you know, sometimes it can be more uncomfortable, obviously, sometimes, to be in fear by yourself than to be in fear with a pack. People get comfortable in being with other people who feel like they do, even if they're all afraid. Even
they
if
want answers. Maybe they can get an answer from other people that have fear, because the ego mind has to look outside itself for the answers.
Right.
And so the right brain and the heart knows that the answers are in there. And if you know that, I mean, if you know, and this is why I called it solution revolution, the solutions are there. I mean, I came to really know that, although since we've been in this, you know, all this stuff going on, I've had my moments of yikes, you know, just like everybody else. But if you truly know that your infinite connection to wisdom and the heart of God, that's where all your answers are. That's where your comfort is, your wisdom, your everything. But we're so not accustomed to doing that. And if these people are in that fear and the fear of the unknown, well then, you know, how can we help them? Like you said, if you knew you were a multidimensional being, if you knew you could connect to your heart, it just sounds like Greek to them. I've been in conversations with people that they go, I'm sorry, I just don't know what you're saying.
And you know, the thing is that's happening on our world today, and we won't go too far down that rabbit hole, is the understanding that people have to be shown. And most people don't choose to trust that wisdom inside themselves until they're shown in some way. You were shown on an airplane, seeking to make sense of your job, seeking to feel better in the work you were doing, seeking to feel more empowered in who you were, versus people who were reacting, getting power from you and taking power from you. So you were left depleted and feeling attacked or whatever. You know, everybody has their own catalyst for that. I definitely went through an experience. I mean, I had many experiences of, joy and challenge in my life, but I had a significant catalyst when I turned 33. And when I turned 33 years old, I had the level of catalyst that no one from this planet could solve. Sometimes people feel that when they get a diagnosis of some kind and the doctors give them, sort of a grim forecast of how that could play out. And when the doctors exhaust their modalities or their treatments or whatever, and they say, I'm sorry, there's nothing else I can do. Sometimes that's the catalyst for people. In the past, that's kind of what was needed, is some sort of individual catalyst that unfortunately, if some of us go through, but a lot of other people stayed sleeping. What you have with COVID and what you have on the planet with the rising energy now, everything is amplifying.
Right.
If you pay attention, we live in a vibrational universe, and as riots break out somewhere, as divisiveness in families escalates, as this divide and these divisions are amplifying right now, it isn't just like, oh, unfortunately, this neighbor down the street, something happened, like somebody's family member died in a car accident and that was their catalyst, but then I'm going to hunker down in my little world. I can feel compassion for them, but I'm still going to just put my head down and put my nose to the ground, and I'm going to do what I do to survive in 3D. We can no longer ignore amplifying energies. And I think this is the way it's designed on this planet right now, is that, I think in one of my recent transmissions, the title was "The Time for Sleeping is Over."
It's over, right.
The time for sort of this small vision and the little picture is over. And we're having to look at the much bigger picture. And I'm sure you would say this, but I would definitely say in my catalytic experience, would I have loved someone to swoop into my experience and just give me the pill, or just give me the remedy that was going to magic wand that was going to wave over what I was going through? No. And the gift was, when I was in such like absolute despair and searing pain inside myself, every morning I woke up with myself, and I knew I had been to every specialist and anybody that could have had a tool or instrument or magic wand to help me. I had sought them out already. And that was about a 5-year journey. And when you go through that, like an exhaustive process like that, and you say, nothing from this world is going to help me survive what I'm living. Now, I had a pretty extreme example and experience, but other people might be feeling that. They might be feeling the tensions in politically, financially, economically, with their health, and we can just witness that. And it is an invitation. People can try and keep pulling the covers up over their heads, which is a metaphor for that little picture, but contraction never helps anybody. It actually keeps you stuck in your ego. And truly, since the beginning of this cycle of separation, we've been in pain individually and together, because we separated from the source and the life force that gives us the bigger picture. So of course the design, if people are listening and they don't understand, I mean, people like us can only express what we experienced as an attempt to give you a little bit of the bigger picture of how you can take these steps too. No one is going to take these steps for you, and no one in my trauma in my family was going to solve the problem for me. Right. I had to learn how to connect and get quiet long enough when the pain and the fear and the overwhelm and everything that a lot of people are feeling came deeply into my life. I was the one who had to figure out a way, because I was sinking in all of that, to take a deep breath, to reach out to spirit, to admit to myself, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't know how to talk to spirit. I don't know what the answers are. I don't know if I'm going to survive another day. And when we surrender and we just admit that we don't know, I was
just going to say, surrendering to spirit, isn't that the same thing as surrendering to your sovereignty? But you didn't know you were surrendering to your sovereignty at the time.
No, I
I mean,
didn't have that language, but that's the vibrational mechanism where faith and trust at this deeper level and tapping into a more infinite universe that lives inside us. We have the whole universe inside us. It's what you said with an ocean in a drop and a drop in the ocean.
well, and the other thing is that, you know, when you're living in that faith and trust, it is the unknown. You don't know what your next answer is going to be.
No.
You don't know what the next problem is going to be.
No.
So living in the ego mind, you don't live in that faith and trust and
You're trying
surrender.
to control. You're trying to control a very small world.
Right. And you have the FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And so you end up doing things you may not want to do, but by darn, you're not going to let them go and you're not going to go with them. Right. And so it's, I think surrendering is a huge thing because it's letting go. It's disengaging in the dynamic of the ego mindset, which is the energy game, which is don't let someone get ahead of you. You have to like get there first or whatever all those energy game dynamics are. It's so different over here because in that divine mindset, it's inclusive and you love everybody
And what's good for me,
everybody.
what's good for me is good for everyone. But you have to ask those questions. And I think I've said this maybe on another podcast, but I'll say it again because it's coming up. You know, part of that sovereignty and part of that surrender, when I was going through my particular challenge and my particular, you know, experience of trauma at a deep level, and I started crying out for help to spirit because all the other phone calls I was making to everybody else, no answers. And so that was the divine design that was going to make me go up and in instead of laterally in my life. When I realized the 3D world going this way wasn't going to solve it, I had to go this way to solve it. And when I was asking those questions and I started basically praying, but I was asking and praying, I was praying through my asking, which is a vibration. I was saying, you know, just really in despair, I don't know what to do. I mean, that's a prayer. I don't know what to do. It's you're calling out to a force bigger than you to help you navigate something that you can't see. You don't know the answers. You don't know how it's going to play out, and you don't feel like you have the tools to deal with it. So this is when you begin to break wide open. This is the beginning. And over a 4 to 5 year period of time, and very intensely for 3.5 years, I would ask Spirit, how long do I have to suffer? How long, when does the suffering end?
Right. I've done that.
And the Spirit said to me, when you are ready. Right? When does the suffering end? And the answer
Right. I thought I was ready. Dude, I was ready a long time ago.
Right? I was ready before this all started, right? That's kind of how we feel. And I had more feelings about that because it didn't feel like an answer. It felt like a question. I asked a question, they gave me a question. But in fact, they were giving me a statement. It was a guidance, and it took me years to figure out. And I didn't know that was an answer until the day I simply had grown enough to know it. And one day when everything was pretty disastrous in my life, it was like an ultimate disaster day. I knew in that moment, I just stopped everything I was doing. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm ready. I'm ready. The insanity.
You know who had the answers because you looked over here and over here and over here. And that reminds me of when you first realize that your parents don't have all the answers. Yeah. And that it forces you to go, oh my gosh, I have to lean on me. And if you haven't had any kind of training, now if you're started out as real young and your parents are telling you, you have the answers, you know what to do, you can figure it out, everything you need is inside of you, and you hear that your whole life, then you're in a way better place than you don't have the answers and your parents don't. If your parents don't, oh my gosh, you are like screwed, right? And so I think that's the moment that you came to where there were no answers out here.
None.
at all. And I think that's what the whole dynamic of what we're going through now on the planet is, forcing everybody inside.
Well, and that's also the invitation and activation of sovereignty. People think they're free in the world, but look at our world. We're
Right.
in lockdown in many cities, and people are, it's complicated. I don't, it's a rabbit hole we may not go down, but people are being dragged from their homes in certain parts of the world because either they're posting things on social media and saying they're not going to wear a
Right.
mask, or they're trying to have conversations about what they see as truth. And anybody that's competing or conflicting with the narrative that certain places want us to know, then we're not only censored on the platforms, but some people are being dragged off to God knows where. And so we have to really, this is kind of one of these catalytic times. I can see that, and I see the energy game. I can see that and see the duality game playing out. I'm not in the middle of it with my ego looking all around and being very, very afraid, because I've already lived that way. And I have the perspective from a bigger picture. And I know that doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my higher self, and it doesn't serve the collective. When I look at the bigger picture and I can
Right.
extract things that ground me and take me into a place of knowing that we have the solutions for what is going on in the world. We have it today.
You do.
We have it right now. And I know people could be listening to this and saying, how could you be saying that? Aren't you seeing what's going on in the world? Don't you see the catastrophe? And I'd say, well, I've lived a few of those cataclysms in my soul history and in this lifetime. I've lived through those experiences. And the only way you gain wisdom and you gain the grounding that I feel I have, it doesn't mean that I have all the answers right now that I have. I could list 1 through 10 exactly how we're going to, shift out of this situation globally. But I know that if we would access this field of energy I'm describing, yeah, we already have the answers.
You have a knowingness that you have confidence in. And the only way you can get that, and that's coming from the learning about your sovereignty and the energy of your sovereignty and where it comes from and how to access it in your heart. That knowingness gives you the confidence that everything's going to be okay. And you're not going to get that from your ego mind. I always point to the left and
Yes.
the right. Yeah.
Right.
So the ego, when I was first learning to deal with my ego, and my ego was never, I was never like an outrageous bitch or anything like that. But when I was learning how to live from my heart, I had to tell my ego and my human side that, look, if you have a problem and you're upset, you give it to me. Give me all of it. Don't hold anything back. And then I would listen to myself, blah, 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 like that. And I'd go, anything else? Any more? Do you sure? Are you sure? And then I would say, that's good. I accept that. I acknowledge that, but we're going to respond from our heart. And I did that so much that I honestly believe that little Renee, which I called my human side, just came to trust that she would be able to express whatever it was going on in her. No holes barred, right? So then there was this confidence developed there that I'm going to allow myself to express whatever it is I need to express. And then I can go, okay, you got it. You got it all. And then I would still respond from my heart. And it just became easier for my ego to disengage from the energy game, because it takes a lot of work to stay in that energy game. There's always judgments and remembering what you said to the other person, remembering your like fibs or your lies or whatever.
Oh, it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job and then some. It's exhausting.
It is.
You were, in that way, you were allowing yourself to experience a deeper trust of yourself, that you weren't going to throw your ego self under the bus. You were going to let it have its expression and its experience with yourself. Yeah. And then over time, it's almost like the ego expressed itself out of a job. It really.
I have nothing left. Okay, I think I shot my wad right there. So, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I gave it all I got. And
Right.
you're still there with that presence, knowing that it needs to say that the 3D world is very complicated. It has a lot of opportunities to engage fear. It's exhausting. And sometimes we just need to express that with ourselves. And of course, there are healthy ways to do that. There are ways that we can journal. There are ways that we can, cry. There are ways that we can call it out when we're with ourselves. There's so many ways we can nature it out. We can go dig holes in our yard and fill them back up. I have rocks on my yard. I've said you can carry a rock from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard. There's so many ways to literally, physically, and emotionally and energetically move that energy, which you did in your own way. And what I also, when I go back to my when you are ready, when I was in my crisis, when you are ready, and that day that I knew, oh my gosh, I know what that means. And I still didn't even know what it meant. I just, like, what steps I was going to need to take next. What I knew was that day I was ready to surrender. I was ready to fall into a state of trust, relax back into another deeper aspect of myself to guide me through it. And I think that was the day that my ego let go. It just let go.
Thank you very much.
Right?
Yeah.
It let go. And
Right.
from then on, within a matter of weeks, and it had taken years thinking that the little I was going to find the solution. When I finally let go, the solution found me. And same thing with you. When you let it out, you let the ego out, you let it have its expressions with you in some version of a safe manner, but when you can allow for that, you created the space for the solutions to come through you, to be guided. And it doesn't mean that the ego is not still inside me. I didn't vanquish it or exile it
You
somewhere.
can't anyway.
No, it's still there. It's always a choice. The ego's like, oh, let me tell you how I think about that. It will always be trying to tell me its version of the story. But now I see it's one version, and it's just an ego version at that. And then there's an infinite amount of versions and options that I have to respond to any one thing. And, you and I would both say that doesn't mean that we never choose the ego's response. Sometimes the ego.
Yeah, sometimes I go, stand back, man. I'm going to enter my ego and get out of the way, man, because it's time. It doesn't happen very often. And when I do, I get done, I feel really good. And then I go, okay, I take back all that. I'm going to calling back the energy because I don't want to be connected to that. But you do it, but see, you do it in the spirit of accepting that your ego is part of your oneness and your presence. And, us talking about the sovereignty like this, it kind of makes me see that once we surrender and start really understanding that bigger part of ourselves, that big picture, which we are and we're connected to and we're made of, and we're light and love and all that stuff that just gets kind of crazy, then I think you realize that your job, your life is about managing your energy and the energy that comes to you. And Spirit gave me this analogy that the energy game, the reactive creator, is like the ball in a pinball machine. And this happens, and once it gets going, well, you don't stop because it never ends, because that's what the energy game is. And if it's not this person, the next thing, you get in the car, you're already upset, the light is not changing, and there's all these things that can upset you, so you never stop reacting. But when you learn to live in the big picture, then you have that bigger understanding, and it's so much easier to manage your energy because you realize that you've disengaged from the energy game, and you can feel it. Like Spirit would say, can you feel that coming up? Can you feel that, that here comes the energy game, and then you can disengage. And so you have the reactive creator, like the ball in the pinball machine. And then you have the conscious creator, where you're walking down a straight path and life is coming at you from all different sides like this, but you're still on your straight path. Your conscious awareness that you're a conscious creator, where you're connected to your sovereignty, to the divine love and everything else. And as things come to you, you know that you're managing your energy, you're managing the things around you. Does this need immediate attention? Can I table this one? do I need to answer this phone? And so you have the tools, and you make the options for yourself, not for the reaction that would be going on in the energy game. So it is about managing your energy as a sovereign creator, because you have energy that you're projecting, and here comes energy at you, and oh my God, the collective energy, we're all connected to everything. So I think that's when people like us choose to be the love and project the love, because we know we're connected and we don't want any part of that energy game.
Well, exactly. We essentially kind of remove our energy from even fueling it and seeding it any further. And
Right.
you know, I wanted to say a couple things. One, when you talked about sometimes when everybody is in the energy game and you're not, people can get irritated with you because you're not reacting. I've definitely had people say, well, you're not suffering. You're not joining people in the suffering. And I'd say, no, I'm not. Oh,
It's
and
not fair.
and that just made some of those people very angry, and in some ways a friendship fell away because of that, because I was living from a perspective that I could be of a lot more assistance from a place of grounded neutrality and being in compassion and love and listening for other ways to support a particular situation than getting in the middle of it, having scars and scrapes and, you know, all these kinds of attacks, and nobody was feeling good. You can't help people. It's like on a plane, Renee. I think, I'm sure you know this example of like, put your oxygen mask on first. You know, parents, put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help your children. You know, and there's a lot of people that don't understand that, is that of what use am I to the collective, right? If I'm not breathing.
If you're not engaged, or if you're not engaging in the energy game, and then your friend that couldn't be your friend anymore.
Yeah.
She was coming from her left brain, and so she couldn't understand that concept.
Right.
That's what's really frustrating when you live in the big picture and everyone around you
Lives
like
in
this
the
is
little
like
picture.
40 years ago.
Right.
Everyone around you is in the little picture. You're in the big picture. It's an interesting place to be.
Well, and
You know?
it continues to be that metaphor, which again, you don't choose your sovereignty to make other people comfortable. You choose sovereignty because you know that's how you can make the biggest impact and how you can live in alignment with your true source energy.
Basically choosing yourself. You're choosing yourself and honoring yourself, and it just happens to look differently than you thought it would.
Right. From an ego perspective that already feels
Right.
small and freaked out and stressed and overwhelmed and exhausted, it looks like they just got abandoned. You just abandoned me when I was down.
Right. And you don't understand me. Well, yeah. The reason why I left the energy game is because I do understand you.
Right? Exactly. And I'm doing my part on a bigger level that it may take you this life or other lifetimes to see and reflect on.
And that's okay.
It's like that footprint story. You know, right? Do you know that?
How come you didn't walk with me? It's because that's when I was carrying you.
Because that's when I was carrying you. And even God gets accused of abandoning people.
Yes.
I even had that out myself with God. When I was going through my challenges, you know, there were many hours and minutes and days that I felt absolutely forsaken and abandoned and left to suffer. And you have those conversations.
Right.
And then you realize that I was in training to become my divine self, to tap into that same level of faith that Source had in me, that I had all the skills and the tools inside me if I could release my left brain's guidance system that was basically just suffering and despair and all those negative emotions and energies. And if I could expand into higher sight, I would have the answers. And that is what ended up happening. And people who are currently feeling abandoned, isolated, alone, you know, the solutions to whatever it is that you're feeling do exist inside you, but they are not going to come from your left brain. They're not going to come from your ego. It is not designed to help us with this level of emotion and this level of revelation. It is not designed to handle that. And
well, and when you finally gave up and surrendered to your sovereignty, you actually let that life go. You entered a new life. I mean, you entered a new timeline, you could call it.
Yes.
So that now everything's changed. You see things differently. You feel things differently. You react or respond differently. And like, I can remember being on the plane, and I just would not be a part of gossiping when people were, flight attendants were gossiping about other women. And in fact, if I was there, because I couldn't help not being there, I would say, well, you guys know she just lost her mom. She's really having a hard time. We should like support her, you know?
You would give that bigger perspective.
Right. But let's have
Invitation anyway.
compassion for her. And then pretty soon it got to be where people, if I was around, they wouldn't talk like that, because I wouldn't allow it. Because why? Because I was living in that big picture. I saw the divine in everybody. I had true, genuine love and compassion for everyone. And that's the truth. And when you have that, when you realize that you don't have judgment, I mean, I kept going, you're not having judgment here. What is that? Because I would have these things happen, then I would have to get to the hotel room and go, what was that? Oh my gosh, I don't have judgment. I have compassion, because I understand that when I meet them in this moment, a passenger or a flight attendant, that's where they are in their movie right now, in their life. That's where they are. This is where I am. So the highest thing I can do, which is also the most natural thing, because it comes from your heart, you don't go, should I be compassionate? No, you don't do that. You are compassionate. It flows from you. It's who you are. It's your vibration. So it's always with you. And no matter what situation you're in the post office, the market, a restaurant, your compassion and love is going to come out. And your joy and your playfulness and all that. We're always messing around and having fun with the servers in restaurants. What's your name? And, oh, how cute you look today, or whatever. And it's being in that energy that where you're not judging, that you completely have detached from the ego and the energy game, because that's where all the judgment and dissension and division, and that's where all of that lives. And it gets supported by most of society.
Well, exactly. Because they're still living the same ego loop. They're on a collective ego loop, really.
Right.
And one other example that I'd like to give, because this is a conversation we could have many versions of, because there are many angles to living and understanding this. But, you know, one of the things that helped me really understand something years ago is, if you've ever seen, it was a popular lighting fixture in like the 90s, and it was in bathrooms, and it was a long strip of lights, and there were just like 10 lights across, and the light bulbs came straight out. And right, do you know what I'm talking about? That design. It's a great image for people, because it's like we have this third dimensional circuitry, and say there's just representing 10 lights on that, you know, on that panel. That represents all the circuitry, just as a metaphor, that you have in this life, that you were conditioned into. That's how your parents show that you respond to stress. That's how, you know, all the people around you, your teachers, all the mirrors in your life show up in that circuitry, so that when you're stressed out, you can choose one of those light bulbs to activate and turn on. If you get the right trigger, that whole panel is going to be lit up. And we all have that third dimensional circuitry inside us that can light up full on, which is kind of happening right now. I think a lot of people are activated in their third dimensional circuitry, and it's all lit up. The challenge of these times is that there's a fifth dimensional panel of like Tesla technology. And so there aren't even light bulbs. It's just free energy. But let's just see it as another timeline of an option. Okay. And inside us, there's the literal electrical that's like tied to the wall. There's a light switch that activates it, which can be the triggers in our lives. And, you know, that is there. And most people, that circuitry is just on. The power is on all the time. And sometimes a trigger will come in and create some extra panic. And now all the lights are really, really going off, right? You might even blow some bulbs or blow some circuits, right? But we have that. That is always an option. We can play in that third dimensional party anytime we want. But Tesla technology is kind of this, you know, it's free energy. It's really timeless, but we're rediscovering that the possibility.
Magnetic.
It's magnetic energy, and it functions in a whole different way than we've ever understood. And that's kind of the fifth dimensional circuitry we have inside us as well. And you can see how in all of our lives, you know, I'm approaching 50, not there yet, but I'm approaching 50. In my lifetime, we're all accustomed to walking into a room and flipping on a light switch. But as more innovations come out and more of Tesla's technologies and free energies start to grace this world again, it's been meant for us this whole time, and it's kind of been held back from us for a time. But it's possible, I don't even know how Tesla technology works, but I don't suspect we're going to be flipping a switch on a wall. Somehow, I don't exactly know how it's going to work, but it's going to be a different way of interacting with energy than we're used to with the light switches. And this is kind of a metaphor for like not feeling sovereignty and feeling our sovereignty. We know what it's like to go into our ego's trap of fear and panic and reaction as a creator. But it's going to take some new skills and to open inside us to engage sovereignty. And sovereignty is free energy. Sovereignty is magnetism.
Oh, that's a beautiful, oh my gosh, that's so true, because you expend energy when you're in the energy game and the ego mindset, but when you're in the divine mindset, you get energy.
It's infinite.
You get, because you are channeling that love which never ends. Oh gosh, that's why you're so happy and silly and carefree and trusting and like the little child, like the Bible says.
Right.
Be like the little child. And
we can feel abandoned, and we could say, oh, you know, and we can accuse the third dimensional electrical system, you know, and we all have experienced a power outage, I'm sure, at some point. And we can, you know, yell at the, you know, power company, and they're not doing it fast enough, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And we can judge it, and we can all be angry about it. But you still have to wait for that finite source of energy to come back online.
Right.
And stay on that trap and that loop. Or as metaphor, we can leave that grid and make the choice every time a trigger comes in. So if this is 3D and this is the free energy up here, right, that's renewable, infinite, every time a trigger comes into our awareness through our sight and our hearing and our senses, we get to say, am I going to go low? Am I going to go lower into the trap of that third dimensional circuitry, right? That I know that loop so well. And I know the people I'm probably going to have an argument with. I can predict exactly how it's going to play out because I've seen it play out so many times. Or I can even know myself when I blow a gasket and I finally hit my limit, right? My electrical circuit has limits. And my kids will know when I hit that limit, okay, it's like you said, it's like,
clear the decks.
Clear the deck, right? Because I've had enough, right? I've had enough. And now you're just going to get like my version of direct truth coming like straight at anybody else in the room, period. Right? And you know, there are people that can attest to that. And then when I'm in my better self and I can take a breath, which helps me give me a pause, because I always know the third dimensional circuitry is ready to wire and fire together.
Right.
But when I can take a breath, I take a breath that's cueing myself, nope, going into higher dimensional, going into the infinite, going into the high road, and my God self that knows how to move in this situation. It knows how to respond in this situation.
Exactly. Don't you find it amazing that it exists, that we have this dual part of ourselves, that we can, I mean, being in ego mindset all the time and you don't know about the divine mindset, you're stuck there. You're in a, like in that part of one dimension because you're only here reacting, and then everybody supports it. And you may not even know about the other part. But when you realize that you have a choice, I just think it's mind-boggling that we can access our infinite selves. That is a reality. Not only do we access our infinite selves, then we become our infinite selves. We're not allowing ourselves to be limited, and that we're doing this whole dance to move in more and more and more into that higher dimensional self, where your life is a lot easier. And I had a great analogy. It's like you're in a tar pit on the planet, and you're in the tar pit with the people in 3D, but the tar isn't sticking to you.
Right.
So you're walking around the tar pit and all these other people are dragging, and it takes a long time to lift a leg up and put it down. And you're just like flowing through the tar.
Yeah.
And,
It doesn't
but you're
stick.
still in the tar pit. So, and like you said earlier, we're in the world, but we're not of it. And I think you're in the world when you're in the ego mindset, because you're stuck in that 3D duality mindset that keeps you stuck reacting and not finding the answers you want. And maybe this book will help you find the answer. Maybe that person will help you find the answer. But when you go inside, they're all there.
And when we're trapped, I want to say a couple more things. But when you're trapped in that tar, when you're trapped in that tar pit, and a lot of people feel that way right now, from that place of stickiness, and every time they try and get free, they get attached again to another pot of tar. You know, they're really stuck. It's really easy to be so frustrated in that and look for who's to blame for what you feel.
Right.
Because then the blame game comes out and you participate even more in the duality games, because you're basically saying, I feel so stuck and so trapped and so miserable, and I don't see any way out. But
no solution. They don't see the solution.
No, and the only power I can find, because I feel like I'm losing life force because I'm so stuck, is to blame somebody else. And anger can feel powerful. Accusations and blame can, when you're in a place of powerlessness, it's one of the last forms of power we have, right, as human beings. And it's what our ego will always resort to, as it's sort of, you know, it's going into a little bit of despair. It's feeling less and less empowered. It's getting more and more trapped. It's going to go out fighting, and it's going to accuse somebody else is responsible for this tar pit that I'm in. And it might just be all of you. Right? And we start to point the fingers at who we think is trapping us. And when we don't realize that it's an inner excavation process, it's an inner vibrating process where you set yourself free. Nobody externally is free.
Spirit gave me a great example of that one time. So your hand is here and you're hurting your hand, right? And your friend is sitting there in front of you, and wow, your hand, does that hurt? Yeah, it hurts. I'm on medication. The doctors don't know what's causing it. And so I pray every day because it really hurts. And, I'm looking for a solution, right?
And it's you the whole time.
Right. And so, and that's a good metaphor. That really got me when I went, yeah. But, and bless us. I always say blessed humanity, because look at us. I think we had 3 strikes against us before we even came out, because your parents can't give you what they don't have.
Right.
And then you look outside of you, because that's how we're taught. So that's why everyone wants to read all the books and do all this stuff and take all the classes to try to find what's already inside of you, and to try, I've been practicing radical acceptance, which is a term I just got. Radical acceptance for who I am and where I am in my life. Because I've recently had some big changes. And so it's like, and so to be able to just say, you know what, you're good. You're good, Renee. You're still here. You're still you. Nothing has changed you. But now I really am moving into my sovereignty and paying attention more to the choices that I'm making, and making sure that they're for me. And I trust already, because I know how to access my heart, that my choices are going to be in alignment with the divine, because I know my heart. I wouldn't hurt a fly. I've actually taken a spider outside and go, I'm sorry, I just have spider fear right now. And, I've even killed some that I thought might've been poisonous that could come back in the house. I go, dude, so, I'm going to recycle you, but I just want you to know I love you and who you are and all that. Who does that? Good thing nobody was around when I was doing that, because that is like crazy. And so, but, so accept it, and when you have that divine connection to your sovereignty, you're also connected to everything else.
Yes.
Every weed, even the weeds. Oh, you're so cute. Nobody ever tells you how cute you are, right?
that's like a light worker. Like that is totally a light worker, like blessing the weeds. And I have to say, I do the same thing. And with insects and cockroaches and
Yeah.
everything that I can save.
Thanks.
And I have cups. I'll have to tell a trick. You know, I really do. I take a cup and a piece of paper and I slide the paper in the cup and I get them out. And I say I've saved so many lives, because you know, as much as we can, every life is precious. They're all
That's right. That's right. And I know a lot of people that do that and they go, you know, they kind of almost apologize for it. If you're in their home and they go, excuse me, I can't kill it. I go, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I
bless it. And I actually, as much as I can, I'll look up the animal totem, because if it showed up in my house, in my experience,
I do that.
Cockroach just gave me a message and I thank it.
That's right. I do that too.
And so, you know, so like if we bring this home for the day, you know, just because there's so many conversations we can have about this, we might need to explore more. But there are people that are hurting. There are people in a state of suffering at some level. There are people in confusion and anger and blame and in the duality, and they might still be listening to us and scratching their heads. I just wanted to say that where I started with talking about sovereignty, that we entered this realm where we were going to separate from source and separate from each other. Well, we're at the end of that cycle where we're reuniting with source and we're reuniting with each other. And it doesn't look that way because it's a little messy to go from this 3D circuitry to this free energy. And what comes to me is that we are in that reunification process, and that witness observer is that bigger picture. When you witness observe, you zoom, you're here, but you zoom out
to the big picture.
And that's part of what's allowing the greater unity consciousness to come in. Even if you think that this person or this person or this person is to blame for why you feel pain presently in your life, if you can take any of those scenarios right now and just take that person, take that event, take that experience, and try and zoom way out into the bigger picture and what's really happening on the planet, which is this exponential liberation that's taking place.
Right.
And we can ride the wave of that liberation from this bigger picture and in our sovereignty as much as we can. Not to say you and I don't get triggered either.
Oh, right.
Know how to take a breath and zoom out and to trust and to surrender to Source's vision for our life and this planet. Then we don't get caught, don't mean to insult the weeds, but we don't get caught in the weeds of 3D where we're fighting and wrestling and attacking and getting violent and supporting violence because we think somebody is bad enough that they deserve to suffer.
To be punished, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the same thing, you know, as we close this out, that there's people that are seeking answers externally and they need to go inside. And I would say, trust your heart, trust your infinite self. Maybe you haven't connected to your infinite self yet. Maybe you're just learning to do that. But if you can trust that and allow your heart and your, you know, God to lead you into that place deep inside of you where the universe is, where all the answers are, where your peace of mind and tranquility is, where your comfort, because, you know, your friends can comfort you and you can do all that, but bottom line is it's a solo journey and you're by yourself and you need to learn to access your heart by yourself. I mean, someone can help you, but then when they leave, you're by yourself again.
Right. And there's a whole universe when we're by ourselves as individual human beings who have to make that choice. But when we allow it and we give ourselves permission to seek that deeper support where it really belongs and where it really should be coming from, you're accessing universes of knowledge and support inside yourself.
Right. And don't forget, the laws of the universe were made for us. Seek and you will find.
Yes.
Knock and the door will be opened unto you. You know, ask and you will receive. So ask for help. and know that that door is open. I mean, it's like whatever made this cosmos and galaxies, I mean, there's such an order and beauty to it.
And
I
there's
mean,
an
we get
infinite
caught up because there's a lot of stuff going on here, but there's such a magnificent beauty and grace about everything. And it's that energy that's holding it all together that is going to lead you out of whatever you perceive yourself to be in right now.
Well, and that always trusted, even in this cycle of separation,
Right.
that the light and our divinity would return. And if
Right.
people can see through the crumblings and through the division and through the pain that's getting expressed, that's actually birthing the unity consciousness. And it doesn't look like that. It takes a deep amount of faith. That's what we're practicing right now. We're going back into faith instead of fear, right?
Right.
We're moving more into that place of trust instead of division and dividing and conquering. And, you know, again, like you said, nobody's going to do this for us. It's a personal choice that we allow this energy to expand from within us. And you and I both know well, I mean, we're just saying it again, that we know about the ego, and we've been tempted by that many times in our life. Doesn't mean that we won't be tempted again, but we know what it is now. And so with these podcasts that we're offering on Whole Soul Mastery to walk with you in your journey, you know, this is part of the reason we are bringing through these podcasts, is that nobody has to feel alone. Can Renee and I come into your life and make those choices and help you vibrationally shift and manually do that? No. People have to choose that for themselves, but we're a mirror of you. We are a reflection of you. And
Right.
we've been in this too, and we will continue to go through this. If the world could, we've learned so well how to blame and deflect and accuse and censor and judge and all these things which are trying to push the pain further away. That's actually not out there, it's in here. And when we stop fighting ourselves and we start allowing that light and that universal energy to feed us and to come through us, now we're tapped into free energy. Now we're tuned into sovereignty. And we know that essence of sovereignty is a vibration that is you, but you learn how to live. We're learning how to live sovereignty again. We're learning how to express our divinity again, which
And
is,
I think that we need to keep in mind that, because you said we're birthing the unity consciousness, I think it's already here. And I honestly think there are a lot more people than we think that are actually choosing it. Yeah, they're in the middle of their traumas and dramas, but when the rubber meets the road, they are there loving you, helping you, directing you, reaching for you, holding you up as you're falling down. There's so many incredible people, and I've seen that in my entire life and my whole career at the airline, that and people that I didn't speak the language with were just demonstrating this type of universal love and unity consciousness. And so it's all around you. I mean, it is, and you are part of it. People, you know, you're part of it because there's so many that want to do the right thing. And it's just a handful of people that aren't doing the right thing. And for whatever reason, you doing the right thing is making an impact
huge
on
impact.
the whole collective consciousness.
Just by willing to go into that space of, I'm willing to be a vessel for peace. I'm willing to be a vessel of seeing a bigger vision of this than I can presently see. Those two words, I am willing. I am willing. That is a prayer that's letting the universe, and whatever words follow, the universe is listening. So if you say, I am willing to become more conscious, I'm willing to surrender, you know, the old ways of my 3D circuitry and to embrace the new energies, you know, informing me now. I'm willing. It's such a bridge in these times, because otherwise people see that huge chasm and they think, well, how am I going to get from way over here to all the way over here, right? And how is our planet going to get there? We're already doing it. It's moving and birthing through us. And sometimes it takes these cataclysmic like experiences, which is happening in the form of a pandemic and the economic impact and the spiritual impact and all these other things. if we can simply allow ourselves to say, I'm willing for God's grace to emerge in all of this and through me, we're now activated into that beautiful, sovereign, trusting, loving, bigger picture space that even though in the little picture there's some big things happening, we see it from this much bigger rainbow of perception that helps us ground in the truth of our divinity. And we can trust our brothers and sisters on this planet and all sentient life to be doing their part. And if we can witness ourselves when we want to jump on that 3D circuitry, if you would just take a breath before you speak, you may not have to fire all your ammunition, right? And you might actually surprise yourself and just, wow, like that just gave me a 1-second reset to choose to either not say something because I had nothing nice to say and go for a walk instead. It allows you to reset in a better feeling choice on some
And
level.
access your heart space instead of the ego space.
Exactly. And you go into your right brain. When you breathe that way, you go into your right brain, your heart brain, and that universal energy inside yourself. So I want to thank you. This is an amazing conversation. And one, I'm sure we have more questions, so we need to do this again. And I hope this helps our listeners here at Whole Soul Mastery. We're definitely growing these messages and in real time trying to address things that some people are really feeling and just being voices of change and voices of faith and voices of people who've lived in this journey. And we know about our circuitry. And if we can help you become comfortable with your human self and your divine self, so that you can start having a conversation and making conscious choices to be what Renee calls a conscious creator. That's why we're here. That's why we're having these conversations. So I send a lot of love and blessings to you, Renee. I'm so grateful.
You too, Marie. Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you. And thank you, our listeners. You'll find this video and others like it and roundtable conversations at Whole Soul Mastery on YouTube. And also you can find us at wholesoulmastery.com. So until next time, namaste, everyone.